get kicked off. I see some friendly faces and names in the list here of participants, which is great. Always love to see returnees and some new faces as well. So this should be a great session. Today, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share for a minute so you can see Susan and I for introductions. First off, thanks for joining. We're going to talk about Zendesk and specifically Next Insurance's journey with Zendesk today. I'm Dan Putman. I'm a customer engineer. I've actually been working with Susan and her team for a while now, quite a while, I think. So it's been wonderful. Susan's been really kind to hop in here and share her story and Next Insurance's story and their journey with us. So without further ado, we're going to hop into it, but we should really, Susan, I'm going to sing your praises for just a second, and then I'm going to let you maybe introduce yourself a little bit. So I know you as the leader of the team, the Zendesk team there at Next Insurance. I will let you call out the team if you want. I won't reveal them on the call, but I'll let that be your decision. But I think you and I have been working on this since the beginning, since you were evaluating Salto, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So your technical term is senior manager information systems, but what does that mean? What do you own? Who's on your team?
Sure. Well, first, Dan, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to speak today. I hope my sound is okay.
You're good.
What I do at Next, I am the head of the customer operations information systems here at Next Insurance. And what our team does is we handle all of the SaaS platforms that our operations teams use internally here at Next. So these are going to be things like Zendesk, the phone system, other systems as well.
Gotcha. So if a customer needs something, which is just a small part of the insurance business, right? It's got to come through you and your team in a lot of ways.
Well, it's going to come through going to come through the systems that our team provides or supports for our operations teams, who are really the customer facing heroes that we have.
Yeah, it takes a village, right?
Right.
So I really, today is going to be all about you sharing kind of your journey, some of the challenges you were seeing, how you've gone about solving those. And frankly, Salto is happy to be a part of that, but feel free to give us as much context, right? We know we're not all the puzzle. Zendesk is a big piece of it. Salto helps that. So feel free to go as wide as you want. I'm sure the people on the call here are not operating just in Zendesk as well. So, we don't mind calling out the whole picture. So I guess let's start with, when we got into things, we were talking about solving some of your problems, but on scale. I know you've got a number of environments, three production environments, I believe.
That's right.
So what did it look like before Salto, and why were you looking to add something like us?
Sure. So before Salto, and really after Salto as well, is we have 3 distinct business units here at Next that are in the operations space, and all 3 are using Zendesk as their kind of customer ticketing or customer case or platform or customer communication platform. And so you can imagine that having 3 of them is kind of a challenge, and they're each unique in what they do. So it's not a situation where we would ever consolidate them, because the business needs and uses of each of these business units are very different. So we had 3 production instances, but we also had 3, with each production instance, we had at least 1 sandbox instance, maybe 2. So in total, we actually have 6 Zendesk instances that we use in support of our users, who are the internal operations team members. So for us, with Zendesk, it is anybody who's been using Zendesk knows that it's highly manual. And so managing change in all three systems in a reliable and somewhat fast-paced manner was very difficult for us to do uh, in the native Zendesk environment. So we were always looking for ways to create efficiencies for our team. Now, full disclosure, prior to being involved with Zendesk at Next, I was actually involved with Salesforce and the sales team and CRM. So, and prior to even that, I have a career in information systems and in engineering. And so was very much aware of all of the tools and ways that in a engineering world and development world, you can promote code from environment to environment. And particularly in Salesforce, where Salesforce allows you to create packages of changes and move them from environment to environment, I was kind of used to that. I was kind of spoiled, let's say, when I moved into the customer operations space and started to learn Zendesk and realized like, oh, wait, we have to do all of this manually. And when you are a very small team, in our Zendesk space, there's only three of us, two and a half, if you want to, like, I don't know that I can be considered a full person in that space. And Zendesk isn't the only application that we support and design. And when we say support, we are the team that does the full cycle. We do the requirements gathering, design, uh, configuration, testing, and rollout of the changes. So it's quite a lot to do and very, very time consuming. So we're always out on the lookout for ways that we can be more efficient.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of context switching, right? Keeping certain things in your head as you're
Yeah,
working between these systems.
right, right,
Yeah. So it's really interesting, number one, that you spoke of like Salesforce, which those teams and that ecosystem can be massive. And there's a lot of modeling, right? That we actually have Salesforce support.
right.
So having to involve all these systems and kind of build for something that can be very large and something, on the smaller team side, we really aim to fit all those needs. So given that experience and what you're looking to do, how did Salto fit into solving those needs and making you more efficient?
So, one of our big pain points when we were in this environment is we can take advantage of sandboxes, but we actually couldn't because it was very expensive, meaning labor expensive, to keep a sandbox up to in sync with production. In fact, they never were. So what would end up happening is sandboxes were generally used for very specific, like a POC or development of a solution, rather than trying to build out the entire solution before it went into production. So what ended up happening is we would create these very elaborate implementation task lists of every single configuration change that needed to be made when we went into production. And I think I talked to folks at Salto before about usually that would happen at nights and on weekends. And they could take hours depending upon how big of a change it was. And so uh, doing those changes twice, like in a test environment, in a sandbox, and then repeating that in production was just not practical for us. So what ended up happening is the sandboxes would end up being kind of neglected and only used in a period, whenever we absolutely needed to use them. And the net effect of that was we were making changes directly into production, which is in many ways what SaaS platform kind of builds itself on, is, oh, anybody can do a config change and they want to make it quick. Well, you want to make it quick, except when you break something, then it's not so quick anymore. And then for training, it's always not great to do lot training in production, and when people could potentially be messing around with live tickets and live data. So it was always challenging for us to have a training environment. So what Salto, why we were interested in Salto and what it enabled us to do was be able to create sandbox environments now that are relatively synced. They're not 100%. There are still things that we choose not to push back from production to a sandbox environment. But now we can rely on the sandbox being a production, synced with production, as close to production as possible. So we actually can start all of our building of solutions in the sandbox environment, get them fully tested, and only after they're fully tested, then we deploy to production. And, so that kind of creates more efficiency, frees up our time. And the other piece of what it allowed us to do is because we can deploy so quickly now. I mean, if you've ever used Salto and you create your package, when you say deploy, it's like that. It's, within a minute, seconds. And we now can deploy. We actually do this. We will deploy throughout the day because we don't necessarily have to wait for after hours. We don't necessarily have to wait for the weekends. And we know that if something were to go dramatically wrong, Salto is there to allow us to immediately roll back. So the risk of deploying during the day and deploying multiple times in a day or multiple times in a week is now much lower because we have this tool that will take all the guesswork out of it for us.
Yeah, I know our team has been, the sales team has been using that "get your nights and weekends back" as a
Yeah,
tagline, but
yeah,
it's legit for you guys, or
yeah.
your team. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see who's on here, but if some of our team is on here, I think they would, particularly they would recall the dark days where we were working at, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night because we wanted to make sure, yep, Jen's there. Make sure everybody was out of the system, or on the weekends, and your kids got soccer and now you got to spend 2 hours doing a Zendesk deploy. It really did change way for the better our 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 production processes.
Hmm. So obviously you have the efficiency gains. You don't do nights and weekends anymore. Has it changed anything else about, um, your process, when you gather your documentation, tracking approvals, anything like that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So one of the cool things that you helped us with, Dan, and you showed us is how Salto would integrate with Git. And at Next, we do use Jira for all of uh, our tickets, our let's say IS tickets. And so all of our changes are in those tickets, and having like the audit trail of what happened with this change. Did it go into production? Did it not go into production? That was a lot of manual documentation where we would, put right up on the ticket, this is what we did. But by being able to connect the environment to Salto and have Salto connected to Git and Git connected to Jira. Now, when we do a deploy, we don't have to document anything. The Salto deploy updates Git and Git updates the ticket indicating that a commit was made. And so you have all of that history. So we don't have to be encumbered with creating that documentation of the change. The other thing that it did, and this is a lot about documentation, and I'll go back to the weekends and the nights in our implementation task list, because prior to Salto, we were doing a ton of stuff directly in production. It would take time, and we would try to be very precise about what exactly we were changing. So everything was documented out. Every trigger, every action, every condition, every, macro, like every piece that you would configure in Zendesk was documented. And that in itself, to document that, could take hours, right? So now it's not that we don't have that documentation. We have our requirements documentation, we have our design documentation, but we no longer have to write these complex and very elaborate implementation task lists because we have Salto. We just create the Salto package from our sandbox, and we know that it's going to do everything that it's supposed to do. And we don't have to document it out. So that was a ton of time saved. And honestly, we've been using Salto now. I feel like, Dan, it's been a
We're in
two,
year two, right? Yeah,
yeah, I think so. I can't
time
remember.
flies.
Yeah, I really can't remember what it was like before Salto.
That's good. That's good. You're fully rehabilitated.
Yeah.
So, it's funny that you mentioned the documentation piece and kind of how it's lifted that burden. It really strikes me that we hear the same thing from a lot of teams, and it's really about reducing the mindless steps, right? Because there's
Yeah,
nothing
right,
fun or it doesn't require you to activate your brain to go right. All right, click this button, now this button, now take a screenshot over here and put all that in. You really want to lift that up so you can focus on the, hey, what am I actually trying to make for my
right,
agents?
right.
What am I trying to solve for the business?
Yep.
Um, and has it, I mean, let's be honest, has it increased your throughput as well and putting new things out for the business?
I feel it has. We don't really track those statistics that well, like, or that closely to say, oh, we did this number of releases in this amount of time. But yes, it definitely has increased our throughput because now uh, prior to Salto, we would tend to bundle a bunch of changes together because of the cost of doing, let's say, a Zendesk release. And now we are way more flexible and we can do, it's not uncommon. I think even just this week, I swear we've done at least 5 changes. It's only Tuesday, and we've had 5 different Salto packages in the various environments going out. Five changes, much smaller. So we can do quicker, smaller changes, which makes us able to respond to our business users that much quicker and clear our plates that much quicker. So it does increase our throughput for sure. The other way it increases throughput, which is not necessarily in deploys, but in R&D. So whenever we have a change that we have to make, there's frequently we have to go back and go, how many places did we refer to that URL in a macro or in a trigger notification? We actually did this. Again, you helped us with it.
I
Um,
love this example. So you're glad you
uh,
brought it up.
yeah, so we had to change a URL, and it was kind of emergency because at the company we changed a URL that we were communicating to our customers, and there was something wrong in the URL, not the actual URL formation. It was actually somewhere in our other tech that there was some kind of bug in that URL that was causing it to not be stable. And so they needed to give us a new URL, and we needed to get that change out rather quickly. And I think there were some like 70 or 80 different places where this URL was referenced. And we used Salto. The good thing about Salto was we were able to use it to identify all of the places, and it was in a bazillion macros, it was in a bunch of help articles, and just a few triggers. But using just Salto Explore, we were able to find all the places. But then in combination with Git and being able to replace it, we actually used Git to find all the places, replace the URL in all, let's say, 80 places with the new URL, and let Git push it back to Salto into our sandbox environment. And then from there, we could do a normal Salto package to push to production. And I feel like the part of identifying them and pushing the changes into our sandbox, you were on the phone with us, and I think, not phone, the Zoom, and it took like 5, 10 minutes at most.
Yeah, I think the longest part we discovered is we were looking at the URLs, then we saw like it didn't quite match up. And that was because there were a couple that were HTTP versus HTTPS.
Yeah,
We actually
right.
fixed the HTTPS as well.
Yeah,
And it's
right,
just
right,
having that
right.
visibility was really
Yeah.
nice.
And that would have taken hours or days if we would have had to literally go into every element in Zendesk and look and say, does it use that element? Because there's no way to search macros, for example, in Zendesk. So it's helped
Yeah.
our throughput that way. We do use it as a research device all the time when we're looking to design something and we want to say, oh, where's all the places that this Zendesk field is being used, or this support address is being used.
I just realized I couldn't find the unmute button. Um, so like I said, I love that use case. And I think one of the other things I kind of wanted to mention is that we didn't have all of this when we first started our journey with you, right? We had some of it, and we really, really have aimed to add more and more as we go. Like I know when we started out, we didn't have the ability to do the environment variables in the
Mhm.
exclude from comparison, which was really critical for your use case.
Right, right. I
Yeah,
remember many conversations where I'd be like, Dan, you guys are killing us because we have all of these triggers that actually might have a support address referenced in there. And in at least one of our instances, we assign an individual support address to each agent because they're using it kind of instead of, let's say, Gmail or Outlook, we're using Zendesk as their personal customer communication platform. And so there were 70 or 80 triggers with all of these emails, and none of them, we can't put those support addresses in a sandbox. And trying to push sync back from prod to UAT or vice versa was a headache because we didn't have those environment variables, and we would have to maybe go in and edit things, and yeah. And it's been fun to watch Salto kind of grow with us. And now, you've got the environment variables, you even have handled the whole support address thing. That is no longer an issue for us for some reason. And just other little tricks and things that we can now do in Salto that we couldn't do before has been great.
yeah. And I think it's one of the things we really pride ourselves on we're getting bigger and bigger, but we definitely still consider ourselves a startup in the mentality of being able to deliver and listen to customers and fix their problems quickly. One thing I just realized here on the call that we haven't had a chance to talk about that we started doing with some other customers is the ability to look at Jira tickets. When you're doing a deployment, you put a ticket ID in the deployment, and we can look at that and say, hey, is that ticket, is that a valid ticket? And if you want to make sure that ticket's in a certain status before the deployment, that's something we're doing with customers too. So that might be interesting for you,
Oh
you
yeah,
and the
totally.
team.
That would be very, very cool for us.
So you're not only witnessing a webinar, but also
We're
a
learning
feature
too,
session.
right? Right. There was something that was really cool happened. I think it was last week. We had a deploy, and there was a Zendesk element in the deploy that got an error. I think it was the email HTML that you can configure. It's a configuration element, so it was somewhere in settings. And so we got this error, we're like, oh, that was weird. And made a note, oh, let's talk to Dan about it when we next speak with you. And we just, okay, manually made the change and moved on because 99% of the rest of the deploy was successful. A few days later, I get an email from Salto, from you guys saying, hey, we noticed this error and we're working on it with Zendesk. And they gave us, oh, until you have that, here's the workaround to make that not happen again. And I thought that was like, oh my gosh, we didn't even ask you guys about, I hadn't even told you about it yet. And yet somebody reached out to us proactively and said, hey, we got it, we saw it, and we're going to fix it for you, but here's what you can do in the meantime. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's our support team. Zalerie and the whole support team really aims to please when they see that stuff.
Yeah.
I I want to take a minute to, because we've been going for a little bit here, and I want to make sure that the team knows, or the attendees know. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Now that I've been going for a while and kind of told some of the story. If you have any questions for me, anything for Susan, I'll see them and I can ask them here if need be. But otherwise, we'll keep going for a few more minutes here and review. So
I do
we'll have
want
some
to, I
time.
see the comment that Jason put out there. I do want to
Hmm.
point out is the rollback, I mentioned it. We've actually used it several times where we put a deploy out and then realized we didn't test it the way it needed to be tested and it was causing errors and we were able to roll back really quickly. And the good thing about it is like, I'll just kind of tell on myself for a little bit. I had done a deploy, I don't know, maybe last month, and I didn't test, it wasn't tested very well. And I was out of the office, I think, when people started realizing it was something bad was happening. So one of my teammates was able to just simply, okay, I'm going to roll it back. They didn't have to know the details of what was in that deploy. They just knew they could roll it back and put everything back to where it was before I had messed it up. So that's another very handy thing for that Salto provides for us.
Ashley was
Yeah,
just commented. She was thankful for that.
yeah,
Oh, and I think that's exactly it, is that like you mentioned, it's super quick within seconds. So if it was a one line change to a trigger or a 50, part change to a form, it's all equally easy to roll back or
yeah,
promote or do any of those things. So
yeah.
if you have,
It's
yeah,
interesting though, Dan, that you bring that up because one of the things that I know in the beginning that we were we may be challenged with or maybe a little resistant to in the beginning was, okay, you have one trigger to change. You're just going to change this one thing. And it was almost, it felt like it was more work to do it in UAT and Salto and then push it than if you could just, you knew exactly what you needed to do and you just would make it right in production. And so we have tried to discipline ourselves to not take that easy way out and go ahead and do that change in Salto because it gives you more peace of mind that you can test it thoroughly and before you push it out. And if anybody in Zendesk has done this where you flipped that trigger where instead of it said does not exist or exists, and all of a sudden your trigger's running for every ticket instead of the one use case that you wanted, you appreciate, that's when you go, okay, let me take a step back. Let me put it in UAT first. And even though I could do it in production, let's use the Salto, let's use our automated deploy um, to ensure quality.
yeah, 100%. It's I like to say it's slowing down to go faster. You
Yeah.
slow down in one aspect to gain in many others. Um, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really want to ask. I'm sure I'd come up with something. But Susan, is there anything about your journey, with Salto or how you've changed or anything like that we haven't touched on that you think we should?
I think one thing that, we can be disclose or be honest about in the beginning, it was kind of hard. We had three environments to um, sync up. And one of them, and you may recall it, was really, really difficult to sync. And it took a long time. And there, I have to admit, there were times where I'm going, oh my gosh, this is just nuts that it's taking this long. And it was just, there were so many issues that we had to step through it very methodically. And you could question, like, wait a minute, is it going to really add the value? And it, it was really amazing to see how quickly it did. Once we got past that initial hump, how quickly it became part of our process. I swear, I think within a month, we were just fully like, oh, okay, this is great. We're just going to keep doing our Salto deploys, and it was working just fine. So I think one thing is, because it was new, and um, if you have environments like we do, one thing we haven't talked about is that our Zendesk environments are heavily integrated with other systems that we use at Next. And so we have a lot of um, systems that are pumping tickets in through the APIs. We have a lot of processes where we will use triggers to call webhooks to other endpoints to do processing, and then they come back in and update the ticket with other information. We've got this DocuSign integration that we've created that way. So we have a lot of let's say upstream and downstream connections and interdependencies with Zendesk. So simply recreating a sandbox every time you need to like get a fresh copy just wasn't a good option for us. And so anybody who has a environment like that, Salto is perfect for, because you don't have to worry about reestablishing all of these API tokens and all these API keys and all of these webhooks from environment to environment. Once you have your sandbox, you can just keep using Salto, and this is what we do to keep it current. And I know we haven't talked about that yet, but that's another important piece of what we do, which is really kind of DevOps related, and how you can use Salto to help you manage your lower environments, not just production.
Absolutely. Because if, like, I mean, you touched on it earlier and you're bringing it back around now, that if you don't have confidence that what you're testing in those lower environments is a good test, right? That's going to work exactly the same when you go to production. It really doesn't give you a ton of value. It gives you some,
Right,
but if you're still have to retest and spend all that time, then you're incentivized again to do the bad behavior.
right,
Um,
right.
yep. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second and see if there's any questions. Doesn't look like, although Jason, I love the value you're adding here with another someone else's touch Salto. Really appreciate that. Um, let's see here. I think I think it's really good point to kind of start to wrap up here, talking about how it is a journey. You're just mentioning that, like, you get more and more value incrementally as you get used to the platform and change your process and align your environments and all this stuff. And all of a sudden it kind of starts to all fall together. Because it's not just a tool that you pop in. Like, it's not like a backup and restore tool where you pop
Right,
it in, which you actually do get with Salto. When
right,
you connect it, you get backups. But to really gain the value, it requires a change to your process and alignment of things in Zendesk. But once you do, that journey, you start to see, well, I don't want to go back. And we see that across Zendesk and a lot of platforms as well. It's I think it's really good to talk about that, because if you also have scaling issues as a team, now I know you haven't added anyone, you've just become more efficient so you can do more, which is great. But I'll ask you actually a two-parter, is do you have any vision into expanding your team, or your adding more work to the team? And if so, is it easier to do with a Salto on hand to be able to scale and include people in that process?
That's a really great question. I always want to add people to our team because we're very small, and we have way more things to do and a backlog than we really have the capacity
Is
to.
your boss on? We can make a pitch
I
for
don't think
a
he's on, no. So, but the reality is, and in today's day and age is, particularly in our company as well, is we are not looking to hire, right? We're not looking to add staff. We're, being told to do, to do great things with the great people you have. So a tool like Salto allows us to do that. Like I said at the beginning, Zendesk is not our sole responsibility. It's a significant part of our responsibility, but we have other platforms that we are also supporting. So this just allows us to deliver more and unique things because we can do it so efficiently. Like not too long ago, we just implemented an RPA solution that has nothing to do with Zendesk. It's not RPAing to Zendesk, it's RPAing to other systems, but Zendesk is at the center where it's, at the end of the day, it's creating a ticket for somebody to follow up on if the RPA fails, or it's creating a ticket as kind of a log of, okay, it was successful about this, particular change. And now we have it in the Zendesk ticket, should a customer call back in or reach out to us about, about that particular change. So that kind of interesting, new and different integration that we had would not have been possible without something like Salto, because we would have never had the capacity to entertain that project because we would be too busy doing all of these things I talked about before, like spending hours creating big implementation task documents of every single change we were going to make in the Zendesk config. So it definitely has.
Mhm. Even if you're not
And
adding people to the team, you're adding capacity. That's
right, right. We're adding capacity. And, I mean, our customer base has over the last several years has continued to expand. And this is true for, all of Next, is that we're not adding staff. We're being more efficient with the staff we have. So
well, I think with that, um, we've been talking for a while, so I'm gonna do a little wrap up here, kind of what we've been talking about, kind of try and see if I can consolidate it all, and then we'll pause for any last questions. So if you got them, get them out there, and then I'm gonna say thank you to you, Susan, once again here at the end, because this has been great. Even for me, I've been a part of this journey, and I'm still remembering things that I had long forgotten about. So um, for you on the call, I think it's really, we wrote this out ahead of time, and it still is proven to be accurate to what we've been talking about, which is great. That we really want you to see that you can scale and operate in Zendesk and get capacity into your team without chaos, without adding more cooks to the kitchen or making it easier when you do. That if you want to be able to see, these changes happening and document them and improve your process, that's all a part of adding Salto to your suite. It really enables that. And then I'm really surprised at this one because the small changes that, being able to deploy small changes, literally what you were talking about, Susan.
yeah.
I love it when it all comes together. So be able to just move those bit by bit and do small changes in both how you deploy and document, just be able to send small changes across really can improve your process. So please, if you have any of these problems and you really want to see how things can get better and you don't have to continue doing things in the dark days, I think is what we said,
Yeah.
the old ways.
The before times.
Yeah, exactly. You can go ahead and go to salto.io and have a look. I'm imagining most people here already have, but you can also reach out to us if you want a demo, want to talk about how we can implement it into your system, any of that stuff. We are here. So yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Susan, for sharing your story and taking time out of your day. I know it's quite a bit. to come in here and talk and in front of all these people. So that's thank you so much for that.
No, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
Of course. And with that, oh, so Ashley, you asked that. I'm glad I looked up. The next big exciting thing from Salto, oh man, in the Zendesk space, I think we just released Bot Builder. I'm sure we're going to add some more support there on the Zendesk side. Pipelines are out, which I think the next insurance team is taking some advantage of. Pipelines, the visibility on moving things. Those are all new fun features.
Mm.
And then honestly, we are just rolling out our security analysis portion. So if you have security underneath your purview, we are rapidly expanding that. So that is the next big exciting thing. So I don't know if that, Ashley, if that's ever going to be a problem for you. Hopefully it's not. Security is no fun. But if it is, we make it better. So keep that in mind. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for attending. I think you're going to get a recording, I believe, of this webinar sent to you eventually once it's done processing. And yeah, we hope to hear from all of you soon.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.